What's up, everyone? It's Willette with Urbex and Coasters, and this is something that has honestly kind of been on my mind for a while, but, honestly, it's something that I was talking about a 5-year plan for Six Flags America if I owned the park. By the way, that's a video that's coming, and, it was something that I brought up as something that I would do within my 5-year plan. So, I apologize for the timing. I don't want to be part of the whole heard this same song 20 times, it's not even Halloween thing. But, sometimes you just get rolling on a good idea and you've got to talk about it. Also, you heard me mention Six Flags America. Don't think that this is being projected exclusively onto that park. In fact, if you want to exclusively project it onto a park, project it onto Holiday World, because there are some things with that park's layout that I'm going to explain here that make it so that actually this would have been a perfect expansion on that park as opposed to adding other holidays, but having the same rides, the same layout, everything like that. Also, I am going to say I'm going to give both a generic version of names for these lands, and I'm also going to give names for these lands that, I envision as part of a replacement for Holiday in the Park and Winterfest. Because, with the Six Flags license with Warner, I do see this as potentially a Polar Express themed event. So the foundation of this event would have 3 main sections. So you would have your Aurora/Northern Lights section, which is totally based around the natural phenomenon of that. You would have your mountain section, which if you're doing the IP version, this would be Glacier Gulch. But if you're doing a more generic or a version without the IP, this would be either a local mountain range or a famous mountain range that you would be able to take the name of and use that to have this section be that. And, just have it be, hey, we have roller coasters that were built over such a mountain. And of course, for your third section, you would have Train Town, which would focus on the industrial machinery behind the trains. So for example, you would actually see genuine train cars, for example, like say the Ghost Town Trail in Blacklick, Pennsylvania, that I have explored, by the way. And then for additional sections, deep within the mountain section. Now, this is the reason I was saying that I like Holiday World's layout, because you've got the section with Voyage, right? And, that's essentially real-life Glacier Gulch being built by Gravity Group. And if you don't know Gravity Group's involvement with Polar Express, that was one of the big coasters that I was like, I actually would be cool with this having an IP, even as someone who's generally critical of rides that are based around IP. I'm like, this would be one that would be cool to have this specific IP because it's, a nod to the manufacturer's history. But, that path going up to Thunderbird, you can only get there by going through what, in this case, would be the land of the mountains. You have monsters of winter in this little land that you can only get to by going through the mountain land. And you would have monsters like the Yeti or Krampus up there. And, you could have haunts. Yes, winter haunts themed to these monsters in this little subland within the mountain land. Also, should this event be successful, there are parts of it that could be incorporated into more year-round setting. Like, for example, the Train Town section, where you're looking at a 1920s to 1950s industrial themed area of the park. Like, you know, if it's popular with this event, you could have that land be like that year round. And, you know, like, I'm just realizing that with the theming for the mountain land, I kind of described Alpengeist. So, you know, maybe it's not quite as Alpengeisty in the summer and in the spring, summer, and fall, but you know, you could absolutely have that mountain theming and have some backpacking theming year round. So, like, this idea of a seasonal winter event, like, there's definitely things about it that you could project onto more year-round stuff. And then the idea of that Monsters Land, like, that could start up in October and stay through the winter. And to those who say that the more traditional holiday in the park type events are extremely profitable, you know, maybe have a land for that as part of this winter event that I am proposing. And, you know, that way people who want that kind of entertainment, they can get it. But people who feel like it's being overdone, they can just walk right through it and be like, coasters, please. Because, you know, I am going to say that I have talked to a fair number of people who do feel that way about these types of events. So, you know, having a theme be more like this, that is more geared towards, you know, stuff that people actually have as special interests that normies associate with that time of year because of an IP that's based around that time of year that happens to have those sorts of elements. You know, there's a lot of potential, I think, with a winter event that's more winter nature focused, like what I'm describing here, if that makes sense. And another reason I was saying this maps out really well onto Holiday World, if they had gone this direction with theming it rather than adding other holidays, that entry area that was the original Santa Claus land, that would be your holiday in the park land. So yeah, that's like, it would be that an equivalent to that in the case of an event like this, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's going to do it here for my video on the missing potential of winter events in the parks. And, you know, be on the lookout for my 5-year plan in an If I Owned Six Flags America type video. And, of course, fuck Eddie Lampert, fuck John Fisher, and an extra big fuck Richard Zimmerman for closing parks like Six Flags America. And I will see you guys in the next one.